Sophia here from My Great Challenge. Welcome back to my channel. The holidays are upon us, and you know what that means? That means desserts. I'm probably going to do a series every Monday. If I can, I will do a video on a holiday treat. And I'm going to start with a very famous French one. That's the Tarte Tatin. And a Tarte Tatin is nothing more than a upside down apple tart with caramel and butter. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of calories. But it's super easy to make. It's really a no-brainer. It's you just gotta bake your apples with a puff pastry on top and then flip it around, and that's it. You have a upside down tarte tatin. So let me show you the ingredients and let's get started. Here goes. You need apples, obviously. So these are Empire apples. They are the best to me for anything baking. However, these we ordered online and we're very upset because the company clearly sent us last year's apples. They're not as crisp as I would want them to be, but you can use Granny Smith, you can use Pink Lady, you can use Gala. Anything that's super powdery will fall apart, so be careful. So you need about 8 apples. You need lemon to coat your apples with so they don't turn brown. You're going to need 4 tablespoons of butter, and I have to put it back in the fridge because it needs to be cold. And if you don't feel like making your own dough, you can get your puff pastry at the store. This one is from Trader Joe's, and guess what? It's going into the fridge again because they need to be cold. And the last ingredient is 3/4 of a cup of white granulated sugar. First things first, I'm going to turn my oven at 400 degrees. First order of business, I'm going to peel my apples. So again, I'm using about 8 apples. These are small, so if you have small apples, 8, 9 apples. If you have big apples, 6, 7. Pull at the middle. Okay, so there's a whole thing about what size apple do you want. Some people, if they're small apples like this one, will just keep the whole half of the apple, and others would cut them in third, and this is what I do. So I cut them in third and place them in my bowl, and then I will add lemon juice. So once you have all your apples peeled and cored and sliced into thirds, you want to add the juice of half of a lemon. That's going to keep your apples from turning brown. Give it a stir. Okay, put them to the side. So what I'm going to do here is use my cast iron, and I am going to start making caramel. So I have a medium heat, And to that, I'm adding my sugar. I'm gonna let my sugar start melting, and I'm gonna turn it a lot, stir it. But I want to cook it until it gets, let me spread it a little bit more, until it gets a nice amber color. So I don't know if it shows, but the caramel or the sugar is starting to melt. You see that? Okay. So what you want is for the caramel to start getting like a nice amber color. And it's, from my experience, it always looks like it's getting too dark. Let's lower it a little bit. But in reality it's not. And plus I'm on a black background. So what I'm going to do now that it's pretty much all melted, I'm going to let it simmer a little bit. For about, you see my cast iron? Doesn't stick, right? For about a minute, and then I'm going to start adding the butter to it. And what I'm going to do now is turn it off. So I'm turning it off, and I'm going to start adding my tablespoon of butter one at a time. So here's my first one, and I'm going to mix my butter with the sugar and let it melt entirely until I add my next one. And remember, I turned off the heat. There's enough heat in the cast iron to keep the caramel and the butter going. So here's 1 tablespoon. Here's a second one. Done. Okay, so here's the caramel. So now what I'm going to do is turn the heat back on, kind of like medium, and I'm going to add my apples, and they're going to cook in the caramel, and you want to cook them until they start getting soft. That's the trick. Sometimes we overcook them and the apples end up falling apart. Because remember, they are losing some of their moisture and water while they're cooking. But you want to stir them and cook your apples in the caramel. Now don't worry, at that point you're not going to burn the caramel because it has butter in it. And you want to make sure that all of your apples are coated in your caramel. So if your caramel looked for a second like it was hardening, like the one that I removed from my spoon, don't worry about that, because with the heat added to it, it will soften again. Okay, so just keep stirring, and we're going to cook for about 10 minutes. So while my apples are cooking, I'm going to take a sheet of the dough and I'm going to thin it out a little bit to make it a little bit larger. And one way to tell whether your apples are done is when you start having this wonderful scent of apple pie coming out of your skillet. These are ready. Okay, turn off the heat. I'm gonna let them cool a little bit. I have my pie dish ready. Move those to the other side. Bring my pie dish and I'm going to start placing my apples at the bottom of the dish. So then you want to grab your skillet and you want to pour the remaining caramel all over your apples. So I'm going to grab my dough. Take my dough and put it right over it, like this. And I'm going to cut the excess, which is not too much. And whatever I got here, I'm going to put it like this on the edges. I'm going to do a vent here and a vent here and a vent here. Not too much, we don't really care because we're not going to see the vents. This is getting flipped upside down. And this goes in the oven at 400 degrees. On the baking sheet, just in case you get caramel all over the place, for a good 30 minutes. And that's about it. So we're gonna let it cook for 30 minutes. Now the trick is, when do you flip it upside down? Some people do it way too early. And what happens when you do that is that you end up having the caramel not set and it starts running all over your plate. Okay, so you wanna wait, I would say, good 20-30 minutes before you flip it. Technically, you're supposed to eat it warm. Tarte Tatin cold is not great. It's good, but it's not great. So you want to eat it warm. So if it gets cold, put it back in the oven, you know, one slice at a time if you want to. But really the trick is to let it bake. And a lot of people are concerned as to whether or not the apples are going to be cooked by the time you pull it out. So if the apples are still a little bit crisp, don't worry about it. It's still very good. They're technically supposed to be super soft. So that's the reason why you cook them in the caramel for quite some time before you put them in the dish. But those, because they started as a little powdery, they lost already a lot of moisture. So I'm pretty sure they're going to be cooked through. If you're concerned, then cut your apples a little bit smaller. Technically, for real traditional Tarte Tatin from Normandy, it's the half the apple that you put in there. So when you flip it, all you see is those big pebbles that are the full apples. And you can do the same thing with pears, by the way, which I actually prefer. So I'm going to clean up everything. I'm going to let that cook for 30 minutes. We're going to pull it out, see what it looks like. The crust should be cooked nice and fluffy and brown on the top, and then I'm going to put it to the side. While this is baking, I'm going to do some cleanup, and when I come back, we'll look at it, and then, of course, we test it. All right, I left it in there for a good 35 minutes. And here it is. So don't worry if your pastry is not golden, okay? Because remember, it's going to be at the bottom. Nobody cares. You hear it? Bubbling? Okay. So, what you want is what's going on right here, which is the pie crust being away from the edges. It's gonna be like a plate when I turn it upside down. What you don't want is to flip it now. You want to wait, okay? So I would say a good 20-30 minutes. Even more if you want to, because what you don't want is for the caramel, once you flip it, and I think I mentioned that earlier, to run on the plate. You want the caramel to kind of like stay almost like a jello, you know, like a jello mold. You want your caramel to stay around your apples, right? So I'm going to put that to the side, and we're going to wait a good 30 minutes. So I'm going to let it sit for a good 20-30 minutes. I just don't want the caramel to run, all right? But what you want is a plate like this, which is really flat at the bottom and has an edge on the side. So you want it flat like a regular cake platter, because when you're going to turn it around, you don't want the middle of your pie to have a longer distance to get to the bottom of your platter. So you want everything to be even and flat, and if the caramel runs off, you want something like a lip to hold it. So this is the platter that I chose. All right, let's see if I can turn this upside down and if it's going to come out proper. Remember, if some apples get stuck at the bottom, you can just scrape them off and put them back in. But you want to do it really, really fast. 1, 2, and 3. You ready? Ta-da! Tarte Tatin, everyone! It's all gone. All right, in by size too. I love it. In coolness. Okay, you guys get to be cool together. All right, take a bite. This is a traditional Tarte Tatin from Normandy. Now, if you really wanted, you can put Calvados in it, or brandy, or bourbon.
I'm not allowed to have a comment on that.
How is it?
You're still the pastry master.
Ed?
Yeah.
You like it?
Yeah.
Willie?
It's alright.
Willie's upset because he had to have a haircut today and he didn't want to. I'm sorry, William.
No, she's not.
Alright, so you like it?
Mm-hmm.
Scott?
Yeah, I like it.
Alright, so while they're still eating and loving it, George already finished this and he's going on empty. Alright, so Scott, what's the rate on this? What's the grade?
It's really good. I could see where Calvados would go great with it.
Okay, so you want Calvados in it next time? Okay.
Well, Calvados is apple.
Yeah, well, it's an apple liquor. So you give it what, an A+, A?
I give it, out of 10, I'd say 8.5, 9.
8.5, 9?
Yeah.
Alright, Ed, out of 10?
It's a 9.
Is a 9? Solid 9? Okay, Willie?
8.
8? Oh man.
He got his hair cut, so he feels bad about it.
Yeah, without the haircut, he probably would give it a 9.
Yeah, you know.
I'm sorry, Willie.
It doesn't affect how I feel about this.
Okay. All right, so this was a recipe for a traditional Normandy dessert called Tarte Tatin. You see that it's not that hard to make. You just gotta take your time taking it out of the mold, and that would be it. Give me a thumbs up if you like this recipe. Don't forget to subscribe right here in the corner. Check me out on Facebook and Instagram at My Great Challenge, and my Etsy shop Frenchie and Tubby for vintage finds. Channel merch including cooking apron at My Great Challenge Gift, also on Etsy. And for a more intimate look at my personal life and daily life, you can check me out at patreon.com/mygreatchallenge. Thanks for watching. Bye! Hey, it's me, and guess what? Click that thumbs up if you really like this video. Thumbs down twice if you didn't. You can also share my video if you really liked it, or save it to watch later. Also, you can subscribe to my channel, but don't forget to click that bell button so you are always notified when I post a new video. Thank you for watching.